There are now 37 MCU movies, and we don't have another one for over a year, so it's time to rank them all from worst to best. What's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and welcome back to another video. So today I've got a big ol' MCU ranking of all 37 movies, including the newly released The Fantastic Four First Steps. I haven't done a full ranking of the movies since Deadpool and Wolverine came out. Since then, I've just done like post-Endgame rankings or Phase 5 movies ranked. Now I'm doing the big one. This includes Brave New World, Thunderbolts, and of course, First Steps. But before I get into this, hit that like button, comment down below your ranking of all 37 MCU movies, and of course, subscribe into that notification bell to help reach my goal of 150,000 subscribers here on the channel. I mean, quite a bit. And I want to say this list is ever changing. Like, movies will move a couple spots just based on vibes, and that's why I kind of remake this video often, because A, we have new movies, like 3 new releases since the last time I made this, but also my opinions on movies change slightly, and I, want to rank one higher than the other depending on the day, so this will be a little different than my last ranking. And since I've done this video a lot, I will speed run through some of the back movies where there ain't a lot to talk about. At number 37, dead last for me, I don't see anything overtaking this as the worst MCU movie for quite some time, is going to be Thor: Love and Thunder. It's a painfully unfunny watch that is just brutal to sit through. There's no other way to cut it. It's the worst movie in my opinion, the one that I see myself going back to the least, and I hope I never have to experience it again if you want the God's honest truth. At number 36 is another Thor movie, Thor: The Dark World. This movie is a snooze fest. It's the weakest of Phase 2, one of the early missteps for the MCU in my opinion, another one of those movies that has like a 0 rewatch value. Above that, at number 35, I've got Captain Marvel, a movie that has its moments to shine, right? Goose is the MVP, the Flurkin. Samuel L. Jackson as a young Nick Fury shines, and I actually like the chemistry he has with Captain Marvel, but the entire movie plays out like an outdated MCU flick. It came out right before Endgame, and it felt like a movie that was meant to come out in like 2009, so it just doesn't hit, and it's one that I rarely ever rewatch. The same can be said for number 34, The Marvels. I was a bit higher on this movie when it initially released, but I have had zero desire to go back and rewatch it since. I've seen scenes from it since the movie dropped, haven't fully revisited it. The villain stinks, and when it comes down to it, this movie's jarring because in the first 25-30 minutes, you're jumping from character to character, a lot's being thrown at you, and the movie's just rushed. It doesn't have a lot of rewatch value, and so it is a lot lower on this list. At number 33, I've got The Incredible Hulk. Many people call this the least MCU movie of them all. I'm not going to argue with that. It doesn't feel like a part of the cinematic universe. Edward Norton is playing Bruce Banner, and tonally, it just feels off. It doesn't have the MCU touch, and it's, again, a movie that I rarely ever want to go back to. At number 32, I've got Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, another one of those movies that I was a bit higher on initially, but man, has this aged poorly, especially with the Jonathan Majors news and Kang being abandoned in the MCU. Because of that, this movie feels completely pointless. I don't ever see myself going back to it because why watch? It's setting up something that's going nowhere, so there's really no point to invest my time in a rewatch of this movie. On top of that, the CGI, very hit or miss, and when it comes down to it, characters make stupid, irritating decisions. So it's just one of those movies that I was higher on initially because it was like, oh yeah, Kang, they're setting that up, they're heading somewhere. That's all been stripped from it, so the biggest praise I had for the movie is irrelevant now. The movie is just going to continue to age poorly, in my opinion. Above that, I've actually got Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. This is number 31 on my list, and I'm way lower on this movie than a lot of other people. I don't care for what it does with the character of Wanda. I like that they sort of went the villainous route, but it's at war with itself, right? Does it want to be a sequel to WandaVision? Does it want to be another Doctor Strange movie? Does it want to combine the two? It doesn't know what it wants to be. Yes, Sam Raimi's vision shines with certain directorial shots and his style's present, but the movie, a big miss in my opinion, especially with the Illuminati introduced. They had the opportunity to do the coolest thing ever, and then they kind of say, you know what, F you guys, we're gonna just ruin this whole thing. Left a sour taste in my mouth. But at number 30, I've actually got Eternals. This movie has great characters, but there are too many of them, and it introduces these grand concepts into the MCU that shift our perspective on what we thought we knew about the world, so it can get a little confusing, in my opinion, and feel bloated. It might have functioned better as a miniseries or a TV show. Many people have made that point. It still gives us some of the best new additions character-wise to the MCU in the new phases, but it doesn't have a lot of rewatch value, and like I said, there's way too much going on. At number 29, though, I've actually got Ant-Man and the Wasp. This is a fun enough chase movie where they're all going after a MacGuffin, and it has its moments. Walton Goggins is in here for some reason. There are some funny Ant-Man quips, one in particular where he's like medium-sized and jumps into the van. That always gets a good chuckle out of me. but it's just known really for its post-credit scene that shows Ant-Man being stuck in the quantum realm while, of course, everyone else gets snapped away. At number 28, I've got Captain America Brave New World. I don't think this movie's unwatchably bad or some abomination, but it definitely has its issues. It came out in February. I tried to rewatch it since then. It just doesn't hold up that well. I was a somewhat defender of this movie upon its release, and I'm still gonna say it doesn't stink, but it's definitely lower tier MCU, right? Sam Wilson, seeing him as Captain America finally in his own movie, that feels right. Harrison Ford gives it his best as Thunderbolt Ross, but the movie's held back by a weak, meh at best villain. It feels more like an Incredible Hulk sequel than anything else at times, which is a weird tie-in considering that movie is already so disconnected from the MCU. And of course, the movie's finale is a bit underwhelming, so doesn't have rewatch value and definitely known to be a messy film because of how much was changed behind the scenes with reshoots. Its editing is kind of iffy, so not a movie I see myself going back to much at all. At 27, I think there's actually a jump in quality. I've got Black Widow. I've seen this movie 3 times. At the time of its release, it was like a comfort movie. It was the first MCU movie since Spider-Man Far From Home, and I enjoyed the hell out of this one. The family dynamic works, especially with Yelena and Red Guardian. We'll get to talk about those characters more later in this video, finally. And it was a long overdue movie, right? We needed a Black Widow solo film years ago, maybe even in like phase 1 or 2, but it took all the way until 2021 for some reason. Makes no sense to me. Black Widow does, however, have arguably the worst villains in the entire MCU with Dreykov and Taskmaster. Like, they really almost sabotage the entire movie, and it's known for the infamously bad CGI, especially in the final act of the film. But regardless, there's still a fun spy story here, and I think this movie is totally watchable and enjoyable. I'd throw it on right now and get a kick out of multiple scenes. But above that, at number 26, I've got Black Panther Wakanda Forever. And yes, I have my Letterboxd list pulled up that I'm going through because I've done this so many times. That's just the best way to do it. Shout out Letterboxd. Go follow me over there if you haven't. When it comes to Black Panther Wakanda Forever, it's a depressing movie. They do their best to continue the legacy and, you know, remember Chadwick Boseman. But when it comes down to it, you cannot replace a Chadwick Boseman, and that's felt. That loss is felt in this movie. Ironheart's introduced here. There's some cool characters in this movie, and it's good to be back in the world, but it's a huge step down from the first movie. It's overlong, in my opinion, very emotional, and again, the rewatch value is not there. That's big for me when it comes to ranking these movies. At 25, I've got Iron Man 3, a movie that when I was 13 years old and saw it in theaters, front row, opening day, because that was the only seat available when I left middle school. I went with some buddies. We were all pretty disappointed with the Mandarin reveal, and I've never fully recovered from that, right? They marketed Ben Kingsley as the Mandarin. It was going to be this sick MCU villain, and then what happened. It's controversial for sure. So I've always felt on the villain reveal with Aldrich Killian being the actual villain. It's the weakest Iron Man film to me, which I think might actually be a hot take. Not really. I mean, the Iron Man trilogy is carried by one film. But Iron Man 3, it's the weakest, and it's, again, a movie that barely showcases Iron Man in a suit. I know what they're going for with his PTSD and trauma, but the movie never clicked for me. Even when I was a kid, and even now, it just doesn't work for me. I love Tony Stark as a character, but this movie is all right. Next, I've got Thor. That's going to be my number 24. Thor is a movie that I think works well, especially the first 30 minutes, because it's so grand, Shakespearean, one could say, and it does a good job with the whole fish out of water element with Thor on Earth. They introduced the character well, Loki's here, and then they're all giving these overdramatic performances that kind of work in retrospect. It works. It establishes Thor as a character. We get a little Hawkeye here, moves us towards the Avengers, but when you compare this to what we continued to get as the MCU just increased in quality, it doesn't really hold a candle to a lot of those other movies. It's totally fine. That's why it's in like the middle of the pack here, sort of, but it's nothing special. Next up, I've got Iron Man 2. That's going to be my number 23. This is a movie I have nostalgia for. That's why it's higher than it should be, probably, admittedly. But the Monaco scene, Whiplash as a villain, the suit-ups from Iron Man, all that stuff, 10-year-old me was eating it up. It's the first MCU movie I saw in theaters, so I have a special place in my heart for it. And I know it's messy. I know it's setting up the Avengers. Black Widow's introduced. A lot going on, right? But I find it more watchable and digestible than Iron Man 3 and some of the movies that I have below it. Maybe that's nostalgia talking. I'll be the first to admit it. But I enjoy the hell out of this movie and think that it is overhated when it comes to the total MCU catalog. Next, I've got Spider-Man Far From Home. That's number 22 on my list. Jake Gyllenhaal's Mysterio having a blast in this role, right? But it is the weakest of the Tom Holland Spider-Man films, in my opinion. I don't care for the fact that a lot of it, actually all of it, is not set in New York City. We rarely get to see Spider-Man in New York in this trilogy doing Spidey things, and so he's in Europe in this film. Structurally, the movie relies heavily on this big twist that's kind of obvious to the audience, so that takes away a bit of the oomph, especially when you go back and revisit it. It's still got some really cool Spidey moments, especially like the Peter Tingle scene in the finale and the drone stuff in the third act. All that works for me, but it does feel maybe the least Spider-Man of the Spider-Man films in the MCU. Who's to say? 21 on my list is actually going to be Doctor Strange. It's a very solid origin story, strengthened by a What If episode, which you're not going to hear me say again in this video, but there's one episode of What If that strengthens his origin, in my opinion. And when it boils down to it, guys, this is just a cool movie visually. It was nominated for the Oscar, trippy as hell. The visuals, that whole like wizarding world side of the MCU, not to go all Harry Potter on you guys.
You're a wizard, Harry.
But that works for me, and this was a somewhat fresh movie when it came out in 2016, so it's at 21. And number 20 on my list, I've actually got Black Panther, which I know sounds low, but we're about to have 40 movies. This is a very solid origin story. I think the movie's a bit overhyped, but the visuals, they're there. The score by Ludwig Göransson's an Oscar-winning score. The production design, all that, so much care was put into curating this world of Wakanda, bring it to life, and that shines. I was never crazy about the third act of this movie. We get the somewhat generic battle and final showdown. Killmonger, strong villain, understood villain, so I definitely appreciate that. But I never was on the Black Panther hype train. I need to revisit it though, I'll admit that. It's been years since I've rewatched this movie, and I have a feeling it could go up higher in my ranking, but 20 feels appropriate. At 19, I've got Captain America, the First Avenger. Solid origin story. Red Skull's about as generic as they come as a villain, but you got the Tesseract here, young Howard Stark. Peggy and Cap's relationship is at the heart of it, and of course, Bucky is in this movie, and we get to see his friendship with Steve. This feels period piece. We don't get a lot of movies like this in the MCU, and I just admire it. I really do. The World War II setting, it works for me, and the score, ooh, great stuff. At 18, I've got Avengers Age of Ultron, an overhated MCU movie. It actually is the only Avengers movie, truly, where we see the team as a family. Especially the scenes at Clint Barton's cabin, like we see them just being the domestic Avengers. We don't get a lot of that. And, you know, we see them hanging out, you know, having a party, trying to lift Mjolnir. There are a lot of moments like that that build them up as a team. Ultron's a solid villain. The final, you know, battle with Sokovia, like that all is insane. You get another cool shot in the opening here when they're, you know, raiding the compound. A lot of cool stuff at play here. You could argue that it's bloated. You could argue there's too much going on, but to me, very fun movie. At number 17, I've got the newly released Fantastic Four First Steps. This goes to show you how many good to great MCU movies there are, because I gave this 4 out of 5. It's a very enjoyable movie, and it's at 17. There are 37 movies, though. Come on now. First Steps is like a retro period piece in the MCU. The setting works for me, and the family dynamic really is what shines. The cast is stellar across the board. It's the first Fantastic Four movie where I actually believe these characters are a family that are unified as one, and the Michael Giacchino score is like the cherry on top. It almost acts as its own character to send you into this retro world. The movie has a lot of heart. The space sequences are riveting, and it's so well shot, in my opinion. Like, it has a look to it that other MCU movies don't. This doesn't have like that MCU gloss, I like to call it. That is absent here, and it shows. This movie works for me, and I know it might not for everyone else, but to me, it is the definitive Fantastic Four movie, and without a doubt, one of the freshest MCU movies we've had in a while in terms of, hey, you don't have to do any homework for this one. It's a standalone movie, truly. No homework required viewing. I wanted a little more out of the characterization of Galactus, but hey, that is what it is. I think the movie serves its purpose, and I'm ready to see what they have in store for us with Avengers Doomsday. But at number 16, I've got Thor Ragnarok. Inject the Immigrant Song bridge scene into my veins. That is what I think of when I think Thor Ragnarok. The humor hasn't aged the best, but give me, you know, the Gladiator Hulk v Thor fight, give me Valkyrie, give me Loki. This movie has a lot of awesome elements. The humor doesn't always land, and I think it's aged poorly in a sense. But man, was this movie badass when it first released, so it's 16 still. At 15, I've got Shang-Chi. I saw this one like 3 times upon its release. I was craving a fun MCU movie, and this delivered that. The fantasy side, you know, exploring the world, Tallow, neat. And you get some awesome martial arts here. So the action's there. I'm excited to see Destin Daniel Cretton's take the director on a Spider-Man movie with Brand New Day. So Shang-Chi, while I have not admittedly watched it in, I think, 4 years now, because it's been 4 years since it came out, I had so much fun upon its release, and I still have to respect it for introducing that awesome character who we need more of. Like, why haven't we seen more of him? I don't know. At number 14, I've got Ant-Man, the OG Ant-Man. This is a heist movie. Paul Rudd crushes it. I have to respect this movie for the risk it took coming off the heels of Guardians, and it worked for him, and it got a damn trilogy. Craziness, but I do enjoy this movie. I saw it at a drive-in theater. Fun tidbit about me, but not much else to say there. 13, guys. It's gonna be Thunderbolts. I'm representing here with the Red Guardian limo service shirt. Thunderbolts is a movie that I have only liked more the more I've watched it and the more I've sat on it. I gave it 3.5 initially, then it went to 4. I'm going to say it's probably about 4.5 for me right now. This is a movie that works, it fires on all cylinders. It has this awesome, unconventional family feel to it, like the Guardians films, but it has this ability to tackle mature themes like mental health, like depression, that other MCU movies aren't capable of doing. It doesn't follow your typical third act battle. It's flipping the script in the end, and that's something that took a bit of getting used to, but once I knew what I was in for, it was a lot more digestible in my opinion, and when it comes down to it, Thunderbolts is a movie that I think is almost infinitely rewatchable. The Son Lux score, by the way. It's heat, guys, it's heat. And this movie, in my opinion, is the best comic book movie of 2025. Spoilers for my ranking of those that's coming soon, but Thunderbolts, I had a damn blast with, and the more I think on it, the more I like it, the more it's such a strong story. The script is well written that it's the best MCU movie of the year to me. At number 12, I've got Spider-Man Homecoming. This is an origin story, but is it? It's not your conventional Spider-Man origin story, but it is the first time we see him in the MCU in his own solo movie, and I dig this one, guys. They nailed the high school coming-of-age feel that I thought was absent in some other Spider-Man films. Tom Holland knocks it out of the park, but what really makes this movie as great as it is the Vulture, played by Michael Keaton. I will never forget the first time I was watching this movie in the theater, and that reveal happened. Peter showing up to Liz's house, and Michael Keaton's Vulture opens the door and says, "You must be Peter." And then the revelation he has, the realization, rather, in the car, ooh, it's such a great watch. At number 11, I've got Guardians 2. This is a movie that's climbed my ranking over the years. It used to be a lot lower. Recent rewatches have opened my eyes to it. It contains maybe the sweetest and saddest moment simultaneously in the MCU with the death of Yondu, where Peter ultimately realizes that Yondu is his real father. Beautiful moment, and I just admire James Gunn's filmmaking here. The soundtrack hits, as always. That's par for the course with Guardians, but damn, it's a blast, and I can't get enough of these characters, so they hold a lot of weight here, and I think it's the weakest of the Guardians movies, but the trilogy is elite. So the weakest is still 11 in my MCU ranking. At 10, you guys will be happy. It's in my top 10.
On your left.
Captain America: The Winter Soldier. I think it's a little overrated, and when I say that, I mean it's not the greatest comic movie of all time, because I think there are 9 MCU movies that are better, some days 12. It depends on my mood, right? But as of today, I will admit this is a top 10 MCU movie. It is action-packed. It's the first time the Russos direct in the MCU. It gave us multiple iconic moments, lines that would be called back to later in the franchise. It's got a very strong script as well. It's highly stylized. It's action-packed. You've got the political intrigue and spy thriller elements. These are all talking points that I've talked about, but everyone else has sort of regurgitated over the years, so I'm not saying anything new. But Winter Soldier, it does rock, okay? I admit that. At number 9, you know, it's held up for me a year later, Deadpool and Wolverine. I know a lot of people have turned on this movie. A lot of people absolutely hate this movie. Not me. This is my jam, and I'm aware there are lots of cameos here and fan servicey moments, but that's kind of what plays directly into the heart of the movie, in my opinion. It's a send-off, a love letter, if you will, to the Fox X-Men universe, but it's also a story that's damn compelling with this version of Wolverine, this variant who feels like he has completely let down his universe. He's trying to find redemption. You got Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool, who wants to be a hero, not just a joke. But above all else, this movie's packed with heart. It will pull on the heartstrings, it'll make you laugh out loud, and it has just those badass moments. The soundtrack's pretty sick, too. I mean, this is a fun-ass movie, one that I go back to fairly often, and it's held up for me. It knows what it is as well. It's unapologetically itself. It's not trying to be some Avengers Infinity War. It knows exactly what it is. It knows the scale of its story, and it executes on that very, very well, in my opinion. So quite like me some Deadpool and Wolverine. Next, I've got Avengers. That's number 8 on my list. This is a movie that is a classic MCU film. It's one of the OG staples of the cinematic universe. It is the first team-up film we've ever seen with superheroes on the big screen. It works. It is a perfect movie, damn near. It's one of the most rewatchable MCU movies, and it's at number 8 on my list for a reason. At number 7, I've got Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, a perfect send-off to this group of characters. Let them ride off into the sunset. It's emotional, another banger of a soundtrack, and the High Evolutionary is a top-tier MCU villain. It'll make you cry, get your tissues ready, you know, you guys know. Number 6, Guardians of the Galaxy, the OG, a movie that I think is very much Star Wars coded. It's infinitely rewatchable, and to many, it is the MCU movie. It's a classic MCU film, one of the top tier ones without a doubt, because it also proved that Marvel could take risks. Prior to this, they had done your conventional characters, Iron Man, Captain America, Avengers. Thor. They said, you know what, let's take a risk with Guardians, and it paid off. They've become almost like a cultural icon in a way, especially of this century for superhero media. Damn, am I appreciative that Marvel took a risk. They got James Gunn to direct this movie. It's really special in retrospect. It'll be looked back at as one of the game-changing MCU films and superhero films in general. But now we're getting into the top 5, so hit that like button. Comment your ranking down below thus far, and let's get into it. At number 5, I've got Spider-Man No Way Home, an event. Unlike many others, this movie united the live-action Spider-Man on the big screen, and it's childhood, right? I got to see Toby, Andrew, and Tom together, finally. It was special. But the movie's not just about that. It's not just about nostalgia. There's a lot of heart here and a damn impactful story, especially with Tom's Peter. He's at his lowest of lows. He has to climb out of that hell. Lots going on there. Dafoe's Goblin just having a blast. Alfred Molina's Doc Ock back in action. I mean, to me, it's damn near the definitive Spider-Man movie. At number 4, I've got Captain America Civil War, a movie that tackles conflict better than any in the MCU. Said that a million times and I mean it. Don't bullshit me, Rogers, did you know? One of the great lines, and of course the final showdown paired with the airport battle. It's nonstop action, conflict, drama. I mean, this is what you want out of the MCU. Number 3, though, I've got Iron Man, and I have a big soft spot for this. It's the one that started this whole universe. I think it's a perfect origin story, but without this movie, we'd have none of the others. So that's kind of why I put a lot of weight on it. I also watched it so much growing up. I had the DVD and I just burned that thing out pretty much by the end of its run. But this is one of those OG foundational movies for the cinematic universe, which is why I have it at 3. And then at number 2, I have Endgame, and at number 1, I have Infinity War. Let's talk about the 1-2 punch together. That is the cinematic event of my lifetime. And I've come to that realization, like reading Doomsday and Secret Wars, they'll be big, but they won't be this. This was the first time we got to see the payoff of a cinematic universe done right. It was 11 years in the making. They knocked it out of the park. Infinity War is the, dark, depressing ending. The heroes lose. Endgame, we see them coming to terms with that, reckoning with it. Then we get the middle act, sort of time travel fan service stuff, and the final battle is the battle of the MCU. The movies play into each other so well. They are really one big epic. That's kind of how I view them. And to me, I will say this, and I love to use the dramatic word sometimes, and this is the trendy one right now. This is the MCU's magnum opus, and I mean that. It's going to be hard to top this. I don't think they ever will, and it's really just going to go down as a special achievement, not only in superhero filmmaking, but in movie history, in my opinion. Endgame and Infinity were the top dogs of the MCU. But that's just my ranking of all 37 MCU films, and it's ever changing. Next time I make this, it could be different, so stay tuned for that whenever the time comes. But hit that like button, comment your ranking down below, of course, subscribe to that notification bell. Be on the lookout for more videos coming very soon, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.